Well, it's a typical November day here in the Boston mountain range of the Ozarks. And ain't too bad though. Alright, I'm gonna cut right to it. I'm gonna give you something else to chew on. Let me go under the rope again. There we go. So, me and the wife been going through Judges. By the way, let me mention, it's all foggy down my road. Check it out there. All foggy. Let me mention this. If you ain't doing any kind of Bible study with your spouse, that is one of the coolest things. It really is, man, because we're looking at the same scripture together, and she's pointing out stuff that she notices, and I'm pointing out stuff that I notice, and it's like we're discovering things together. And that's the kind of stuff you can make some memories that way, man. But anyway, I've been going through Judges. In the last video I mentioned Gideon and all that kind of stuff. Well, I went on through Judges now, and then I went through the story of Samson. Let me give you something to chew on that. Samson wasn't as tough as I'd been led to believe all my childhood, you know. You always think Samson is this big, huge, muscular dude that's just this instrument of God, and he was, don't get me wrong. But he was far from being as tough as he's made out to be, especially in movies. You know, he's always depicted as this big, like, bodybuilder, like big, huge, muscular, like a human version of the Hulk, you know, that just tears up stuff. And if you read scripture, that's a lot of what he does. I mean, he is I call him God's tornado. But I will tell you, as I've been going through the story and really looking at it, he wasn't as tough as he made himself out to be. Reminds me of a lot of people I've grown up with over the years, you know. Somebody that's some big, tough, intimidating kind of fella. And then come to find out, they have their weaknesses just like all us men. We all have weaknesses. Some of them are the same type of weakness most men have. And some of them are unique. I wrote down a couple notes here. Okay, so the story of Samson is Judges 14 through 16. So right early in the story, it's like right after the first time that he really whoops up on a whole bunch of people at once. He's done this great thing, you know, this great feat. And it's one of the few times you hear him actually call out to God, which I thought was weird, because early in the story he is consecrated as a Nazarite, which means he's supposed to be set apart. Stay away from alcohol, don't cut his hair, and stay away from dead bodies, which I thought was kind of weird since he's making a whole bunch of them. But anyway, so he's supposed to be this consecrated dude, and all through the story he sure ain't acting like some holy man. He's acting like a heathen most of the time. But in chapter 15, it's like the first time that he really whoops up on a whole bunch of folks. All of a sudden he's scared that he's going to die of thirst, and starts doubting whether God is going to keep him alive. He's so thirsty. I'm going to die. I need a drink. Great man of God, huh? God's going to trust you for all these other things, but he's not going to sustain you with something to drink. That's kind of silly if you're supposed to be this consecrated man of God. Let's see here. In chapter 16, we see an example of how he falls prey to what most men fall prey to. Most men can be greatly influenced by loving. And these women in the story of Samson certainly influenced him, especially Delilah. So there's another weakness he has that all us men really have. We all got to be on guard about that stuff. Satan knows that's a weakness for all us men. Another one is nagging. In 14 and in 16, he succumbed to nagging. Man, I just come across some really big deer tracks. Ain't that something else? Big ones, man. Let me see if I can get that on camera. I don't know if y'all can see that. Well, that one ain't too big. Still, though, we got a lot of deer around here. Anyway, in 14 and 16, the woman he was with nagged him until he gave in. Now, this is supposed to be this mighty, mighty man of God. And then the biggest one, and this is what really drove it home for me. You know, the end of the story, Delilah finally finds out what his secret is, which it's just symbolic, but... And she cuts off his hair. And the Philistines come in, and they're able to catch him because his strength is gone. And the first thing they do is they put out his eyes. So he's blind. This mighty man, this strong man that's done all these really wild stuff. I mean, one battle, he killed 1,000 guys with the jawbone of a donkey. That's all he needed. There's one story where people tried to catch him, and he was so upset that he ripped the gates off of the city walls and toted them away. So he was a bad dude. Well, they caught him and they blinded him. And in the scripture it says that he was, you know, they blinded him and they put him to work at the grist mill. And then they were going to have this big party. And they brought him to the party. You know, there's the enemy, there's the Philistines, and they're worshiping this god called Dagon, which is a Philistine god. It's like a half man, half fish, kind of like a merman. And the Philistines considered that to be their father of all their gods, was Dagon. So they're having this big party in this big house. Now, that's another thing. When I learned this story as a kid, I always saw pictures of him like in a temple with big stone pillars and everything. Scripture don't say that. It says it was a big house. Philistine houses were very similar to Israelite houses in their construction. It was just mainly mud, clay, rock, wood, you know, logs, that kind of thing. And it had like this big flat roof. And the way that those houses were made, it usually had one central room that was really big. And it had a lot of beams, you know. And then it would have two main pillars that would hold up the center of the room. So that's really what held up the house. Well, Mr. Big Powerful Man of God, he was so He was so beside himself by being blinded. Now this is somebody that was supposed to be mighty. He was blinded, and he was so feeble, so defeated by them taking his eyes. But the scripture says he had to be led around by a young man. They call it, in the scripture it says lad. So I would assume a younger male, boy, man, teenager, something like that. But he had to be led around. And he was miserable. He was so miserable that he decided he wanted to kill himself. And that's when he prayed to God and said, give me strength one last time so I can do this great thing. Well, what can we learn from that? I know one thing. Even someone that looks like they are just this mighty man of God, there's all kind of things that can get in them chinks in your armor, man. Whether it be a nagging woman, or you not being able to control your libido, or you, I mean, there's other stuff in that story. He was disrespectful to his parents. He decided that he was going to ignore Jewish laws and marry outside of the Hebrew culture. A couple instances in there that clearly say that he was going to a lady of the night. He wasn't this perfect dude. And my mind wonders just what God might have done with him if he hadn't have been so desperate and so destitute over losing his sight that he wanted to die. Look, man, us as men, there's a lot of dudes that are going to the gym and they want to have this, you know, the big muscles and the big stocky dude, and you have trouble coming through the door, you're so big, right? That ain't toughness. That ain't real strength. Real strength is trusting in God when things look scary, dark. Things like not letting a nagging woman sway you. It's like not letting your own desires lead you into the wrong things. Us as men, we got to be stronger than that. And I ain't talking about physically stronger. Now, there ain't nothing wrong with being healthy. There ain't nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, shoot, I'm out here walking right now just because it'll do me some good. But there's more to being strong than physical. And, man, there's been many times in my life I've been weak. I pray for you guys. You other Christian men out there like me that are doing your best to be good, man, doing your best to do what's right. We got to be strong. God calls us to be strong, and not just physically. As a matter of fact, that isn't mentioned as much as being strong emotionally, doctrinally, spiritually, having your act together. Just like I said in the other video, we got to have our act together, guys. I pray for you, man. I hope that helps you. It's all cold and rainy out here this morning, and man, I'm hoping it don't start raining on me before I get back up to the house. Y'all take care. God bless you. Don't let them weaknesses get the best of you, man. Hang in there.